Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. What I got for you today is another tier list update after the recent November patch that made a lot of interesting changes. So diving straight in, we're actually going to be placing Abrams in the A tier list. When it comes to Abrams, they reverted the melee attack speed reduction. They gave him some more strafing capabilities with his shoulder charge. Shoulder charge now carries momentum at the end of the charge, so that means we can do some more movement tech. They slightly buffed the spirit scaling on Siphon Life, and then some nerfs to the resilience Abrams has. Now, he's been in a pretty decent spot, and definitely what makes him super strong is the abilities he has. But overall, I think he belongs in the A tier list, as he got some nerfs, but he's still definitely one of the better heroes. With a whole lot of recent changes, we have Bebop. Now, they removed to where you lose stacks on death, then they gave back bomb stacks on kills, and they just did a ton of buffing and nerfing to this hero. Because of all of these changes, I'm going to be setting him in the middle at the B tier. Now yes, it's perfectly fine to argue that he could be better or worse in this tier list, but I think in the current state that he is in right now, it's safe to put him at the B tier. Next up we have Dynamo. In my eyes, Dynamo has probably been always the strongest team fighting character, and probably one of the biggest flex DPS support characters you can play. With this insane ultimate ability that can literally turn a losing fight into a super easy win, Dynamo in my tier list is falling in the S tier. Now comes Talon. Talon got a lot of buffs as of recent, maybe say a little too many, but they reduced his gun fall off again, and then they reduced the strafe distance with stamina on Rain of Arrow. Now as long as he has an extra stamina, you can just spam dash. They also reduced the hitbox of the charge shot again. All these changes definitely hurt Talon because of his survivability is now slightly worse, but he's still in a decent spot. So I believe it's safe to put him at the safe spot of the B tier. Next up we have Haze. Now Haze got some pretty interesting changes. A lot of people don't like this change, and a lot of people like this change. So it's a pretty split on the community whether they like it or not. But basically the changes were Bullet Dance no longer hits 2 targets. That means Ricochet is a mandatory must buy like it always was, but it's even more encouraged to buy now. So it's just like a lot of the damage Haze was doing or has been doing is just completely sliced in half and isn't as good as she once was. Now in my eyes, as of right now, there's better carries to choose from. So with that being said, we're placing Haze in the C tier. Now coming up next, we have Infernus, and in my eyes, Infernus is kind of like a wild card. You either on your team have an Infernus that goes 20-0 or 0-20, similar to Haze in a way. He's in a scenario if he's fed, he's very strong, or if he starts to get behind, he doesn't really do that much. Now, however, they did nerf his afterburn a little bit, and they also just overall kind of slowed down his laning power and laning potential. So with that being said, I don't think he's in the S tier spot anymore, but I think it's safe to put him in the A tier. Now, when it comes to Ivy got quite a few changes. Ivy got some spirit scaling changes on Covenant's Fire and Bullet Life Steel. If you didn't know, Watcher's Covenant is the ability that links you with another teammate. So these changes makes Gun Ivy and Support Ivy rather strong. And because of these changes, you have a ton of adaptability of what you actually want to pick and choose from the items in game. And overall, she's just a very good pick now, more so than what she used to be. So with that being said, we're placing Ivy in the S tier. Now, when it comes to Lash, I think there's a whole lot of opportunity of what he can do. Again, in my eyes, he's a character that actually requires a ton of skill to master and learn. In the right hands, he could look like an S tier character. But give it to someone who doesn't know what they're doing, then you're more looking at a character that's more in the B tier. And no offense to anyone that plays Lash, I've only seen a couple very standout good Lash players, and so for the complexity of this character, I'm putting him in the B tier for just a rather general opinion. But I know the potential with this character is insane, and pretty much in my eyes, every single character in this game could be S tier. It just depends on who's playing that character. Now the next character we're looking at is Kelvin. Now, even though Kelvin received a ton of nerfs, I still think he's one of the best, if not the best supportive character with a ton of supportive utility with the healing bomb, the amount of ability he has, a ton of kill pressure with all of his slowing abilities, and just overall great teamfight ability with his frozen dome. So with that being said, we're placing Kelvin at the A tier. Now next up we have Lady Geist. Now I think Lady Geist is still super strong, still a very good and viable character, but she did recently get a Malice nerf, and since Malice is a big source of her damage, and not to mention a lot of the items she uses also got nerfed, so I think it's safe to put Lady Geist in the middle of the pack at the B tier. And again, like I said, every character can be viable, but this is where I see it with the nerfs and changes at the power rating. When it comes to McGinnis, she received a lot of nerfs, especially to her turrets, but I believe McGinnis in the right hands is a super strong character, especially her wall ability. Her wall ability is insane. Essentially, you use it to deny enemies farm, using it to free farm and get 100% souls collected, and literally just the ability to section people off from one another. So I think it's fair that I'm putting McGinnis in the A tier with just how useful she can be. Now when it comes to Mo and Krill, with the recent buffs he's gotten and just the insane isolation and mobility this character has, and just the map presence that this character has to offer, I'm going to be placing Mo and Krill in S tier. And I honestly think he's a super underrated character. There's a ton of untapped potential that this character has that people don't really see or skip on. So at least in my tier list, we're putting him in the S tier. Now, when it comes to Mirage, a lot of people don't play Spirit Mirage anymore because that got nerfed a bit. Most of the people play gun builds now, which I think is better. And in my opinion, I think he hovers between S and A, falling more into the A category because I don't think he's hands down like super broken or super overpowered. I think he does a lot of damage, but I feel like he doesn't do that insane amount of damage that he once did, making him the S tier. So we're safely putting him at the A tier. Now, when it comes to Paradox, I think she's a very good character, and right now she's extremely strong. In the right hands or even in the mediocre hands, this character can literally be unstoppable, and I think all of the recent changes she has really shows the full potential this character has to offer, but they might have to nerf her eventually as she seems to be pretty much taking over games. So with that being said, we're placing Paradox in the S tier. Next up we have Pocket. Pocket received some small changes that adjust his spirit scaling. They increased his heavy and light melee damage, which is interesting because I don't see a lot of Pockets use a melee build, but something interesting. I think he still can do a ton of damage. I think he's very good at team fighting still, a ton of mobility with a ton of skill ceiling. Again, I wouldn't say he's downright broken, but he's still a very solid and strong character. Now with that being stated, we're placing Pocket in the A tier. I think to put him in the S tier spot, he needs to do more damage or have some type of more to him. Now when it comes to Vindicta, I think Vindicta is still a very strong character. She got some nerfs, so she isn't as strong as she once was originally, but still very good. Her souls that you get from Assassinate are now 100% secured, so making her a bit stronger and a very snowbally-ish character. Now, if this was a few patches ago, I would be placing Vindicta arguably at the S tier, but because of all the recent nerfs and just how the meta is shifting, we're placing Vindicta in the B tier. Now again, she can do a ton of damage in the right hands, but I think all of the nerfs have made her less favorable. Now, 7 is a difficult character to place in the tier list. He received a lot of nerfs, he received a lot of buffs. His ball build was really good, but his ultimate isn't as good as it once was. He has insane farm speed still, insane running speed, insane movement speed. He's very good in laning phase. Now, I don't think 7 isn't amazing. I don't see a lot of good 7 players. You can hate me in the comments, it doesn't really matter to me, but you have a lot of better choices than 7 to pick from, so I'm putting him in the B tier. Then looking at Warden, Warden is like a hit or miss character, either very good or very bad. Warden is good in 1v1 situations, but anything other than that, it's pretty easy to get rid of him. His weapon being a projectile and having super slow fire rate makes him less favorable to me, at least. When you look at all of the other characters, I think I would choose every other character before I played Warden. So with that being said, I'm placing Warden in the C tier. Again, you can hate me in the comments. The basis of this tier list is what I'm going through in the patch notes. Now when it comes to our green goof friend, Viscus. Viscus got some pretty insane buffs. I've always thought this character was pretty strong, and with this recent buffs that you just got with his ultimate goo ball, it just makes him even stronger. If I could, I would put him between S and A, so A+, but for the sake of this tier list video, trying to stay on just the solid letters, we're putting Viscus in the A tier. Now when it comes to Wraith, Wraith received a lot of nerfs with her telekinesis and just damage overall with her cards. Again, like I've previously stated, it's not the spirit damage that makes her strong, it's literally just the gun build, and the fact that she can ult literally everyone on the enemy team when she gets her ultimate to the level 5. So with that being said, we're placing Wraith at A. Now I'm not really sure at Valve what made them cook Yamato so hard, but Yamato is literally just downright broken right now. We're putting Yamato at S. It's pretty self-explanatory. She's completely broken if you read the patch notes. It's like Probably the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, but we're putting her at the top of S. If you don't have a Yamato on your team or in your game, you're kind of trolling. Last but not least, we have Shiv. Shiv is still a very strong character even with all the recent nerfs and changes. He's not insanely strong as he very once, but it's safe to say he's still a very strong character that people at the higher ranks still certainly abuse. I don't think he's S potential anymore, but I levy between A and B when it comes to Shiv. If I could, I'd put him at A- or B+ in between the two, but again, for this sake, we're putting him at B. Now again, I think he's still super strong, can still be A potential, but to make everything look nice and even, we're placing him at B. Now again, you can hate me in the comments for making a tier list that looks like that, but to me, it doesn't really matter. I make these tier lists based off the patch notes, so if anything, blame the patch notes for this tier list. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, like the video if you liked it, and I'll catch you in the next one.